The curtain will rise on Perfect Picture, a musical premiere tracing the arc of Norman Rockwell's remarkable career as an artist and illustrator at the Arkel Pavilion at the Southern Vermont Arts Center beginning on Friday, July 20th at 7:30 p.m. The show is part of a broader festival organized by Dr. Joshua Sherman of Arlington, honoring Norman Rockwell's iconic Four Freedoms series of paintings: freedom from want and fear, freedom of speech, and freedom of worship, and performances will continue on Saturday, July 21st at the Arkel. The festival itself concludes the following day, Sunday, July 22nd. Rockwell made the series of 4 illustrations which were published as magazine covers for the widely circulated Saturday Evening Post 75 years ago to help with the war effort as World War II was raging. Rockwell called Arlington, Vermont home for nearly 15 years from the late 1930s to the mid-1950s and created the quartet of paintings during his time in the Green Mountains. Perfect Picture is a never-before-seen premiere which includes top-tier Broadway talent and includes a Tony and Emmy Award winner, Lillias White. The book and lyrics were written by Sherman's mother, Eileen Bluestone Sherman, and the music was written by his aunt, Gail Bluestone. The show explores Rockwell's life and creativity, revealing a sharp contrast between the idyllic scenes of American life he painted and the occasional upheavals in his own personal life. During a break in rehearsals a few days before the curtain rises, Randy Skinner, a 4-time Tony Award nominee and the show's director, took us behind the scenes of Perfect Picture.
Well, it's the story of Norman Rockwell's life, which culminates in his painting The Four Freedoms, 4 of his most iconic paintings. And so we open the show in 1942 when he is thinking of the idea of bringing this to Washington, D.C., and then we flash back to when he's 10 years old, and what drew me to the project, among many things, was the fact that he learned this incredibly important lesson when he was 10 years old from a character named Amy the Wild Woman, who was an actual sideshow carnival act. And she tells him that you have to give the public what they want. And he remembered that, so he always painted in his style, his very famous style, and these great Americana scenes. And that's what he carried with him clear till the day he died. He painted how he wanted life to appear and how he thought it should be. And I think that's a fascinating point about his life. And then we go through his first 2 marriages. And so you learn a lot about the character of Norman Rockwell, not only what drove him to paint and his art form, but also his personal life. So it takes the audience on a real journey. And then, as I said, it culminates with his most famous 4 paintings. And that's where we conclude the musical, with the publishing of The Four Freedoms. I think we have something very special here. It's certainly what we call very producible because of the size of it. And I think the story is so interesting, and I think people will definitely leave the theater learning a lot about the Rockwell name. But also, we're in a time now where I think the 4 freedoms are very important. And so with the conclusion of the show ending with that, and the last song is called Stand Up Proud, and it's a full company number, and I think the audience, we're hoping the audience will leave feeling very much like an American and the American spirit, and being reminded of how important these 4 freedoms are that were talked about first in FDR's speech.
Danny Gardner plays Norman Rockwell in the show, and he talked about what it was like to bring Rockwell to life on the stage.
That I've learned from researching and the show, and there's such a wealth of knowledge that Eileen and Josh and everyone involved have really bestowed upon me and the ensemble and the piece, and it's really fascinating. I knew Norman Rockwell because my grandparents had a few of his prints and things up in the house, and so that was, how I knew him. But now, learning so much about him, it's fascinating. He was a very deep, passionate person, and he really put a lot of his heart into every piece that he created. He was such a consummate artist. I mean, I always thought, I was always impressed by the lifelike paintings that he had, but I didn't know he had such great hopes of being a well-known artist. The political edge, if there's one, from my point of view, is basically the four freedoms. That we have these rights, and we have to participate in the government in order to make sure these four freedoms are still available to us. You know, you can't just lay back and, you know, let the rest of society do the work. You have to participate in order to make sure these four freedoms are still there for us and our children and generations to come.
The opening night performance is on Friday, July 20th at 7:30 p.m. Additional performances of Perfect Picture will take place on Saturday, July 21st at 3 p.m. and at 7:30 p.m. For the GNAT-TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.